This episode of Main Street Moxie is proudly sponsored by Meadowscapes, a division of Matt's Landscaping, and Elise Harney Real Estate.
Happy Moxie Monday, Mayor. How's it going?
Oh my gosh, do I have a Moxie-filled Monday for you today?
Well, isn't every Monday, but this one especially?
Yeah, well, this one I feel like gets at the root of Moxie.
Okay.
So our guest is Bill Johnson,
Yes.
AKA the Dream Dean. But I met Bill at a workshop, a 3-day workshop at Western Connecticut State University, hosted by the Career Success Center and Kathleen Lindenmeyer, who runs that center. And I was completely overwhelmed in a great way by the work of Bill in identifying and cultivating purpose in your own life. And he walks the talk.
Yeah.
He has spent years, decades working with students, and now post-retirement, he's working with people of all ages and stripes, helping them identify and cultivate their own purpose in concrete and ways that are meaningful to them, and also helping train people to do this work with others. And so I'm just really excited about how Bill weaves together different ways of thinking about purpose. And I'm so excited for you to hear what he has to say.
He sounds like Mr. Moxie.
He is Mr. Moxie, and that might have to go on his website now.
I think so. Well, I can't wait to meet him and just dive right in.
All right, here we go.
Meadowscapes highlights the natural beauty of your property and reintroduces native biodiversity. The landscapes they create have a positive environmental impact while making attractive outdoor living spaces for you, and it is beneficial to pollinators, birds, and wildlife species.
Their work focuses on removing invasive plants, restoring natural habitats, creating beautiful native meadows with custom seed mixes, and designing gardens and outdoor living spaces that flow with the rhythm of your land. Welcome home to your ecological paradise.
To learn more about Meadowscapes, call them at 860-824-1188 or visit them online at www.nativemeadowscapes.com.
Bill, thank you for coming on Main Street Moxie. So we're just going to get right into it. We're going to jump in with the first question we always ask, and that is, how would you define Moxie?
So it was a fun question to ask because I'm like, do I do the textbook definition? Nah, I'm going to come up with my own. So when I was thinking about this morning, I was sharing this with a friend of mine this morning. I said, how would you define Moxie? And I'm like, no, I don't like that definition either. So the one I came up with is showing up in the world as your most courageous, authentic, energetic self. That's what I came up with.
That's a new one. We haven't heard that, and I love that.
Yeah, that's because that's the essence of my work. And it'll make more sense when I share, how I live it every day. So
yes, and we will be talking about that. So that leads to the next question: how does this show up? And while you're doing that, I'd love for you to unpack what you mean by the words courageous and authentic, like how you're defining them in your definition of Moxie.
So, this will lead into some of the activities that I do. So one of the newest activities I created was this activity called the Story of My Courageous Self. And in that activity, you're asked to come up with your best me, your best self, and your anti-self. So it's really a reflection on what's best about you and what's not best about you. And then after you do that reflection, you have to come up with this courageous self statement. So it's a statement that defines how do you want to show up as your most courageous self every day. So the statement that I wrote was be you, for God, for others, and be cool with it. Because I always remembered when I first started doing this work, people say, well, I want you to just do this. I want you to be this way. I want you to, and they always had stipulations on how they wanted me to show up in the world.
Mm.
And I said, you know what? This is me. I do cuss every now and then. I'm not the most politically correct kind of guy. I'm transparent as you get. So I decided I'm just going to be my transparent self. Some people will like it, some people won't. I just have to show up and be me. So,
Be cool with it.
and be cool with it. That's right. Well, they also have to be cool with it. So,
Right.
Yeah, and if they're not, they're free to walk away.
that's right. That's exactly right. So, that has been kind of my guide probably for 2024.
How's it
Wow.
going so far? 2 months in.
It's wonderful.
Yeah.
I think I'm connecting with people I haven't connected with before by being me.
I just found that interesting. How so? As opposed to, the year before, the years before.
So I always thought this life design catalyst work had to be done a certain way.
Uh-huh.
So it was always like a training program. I always thought of it
Right.
as a training program where I have to train people how to do this work. But the thing that was missing is, well, you have to actually train yourself to be you
Right.
before you could train others to do the work.
Right.
But in order for me to train them how to be themselves, I had to be myself first.
Ah.
So it's this really interesting progression of the work where it used to be more show people how to do all the stuff
Right.
and it'll come around versus how people show people how to show up in the world. And I think the work comes naturally.
Can we backstep for you
Sure.
to just explain a little what your work is?
So I created a program called the Life Design Catalyst Program. So let me give you a really short version of it. So when I was hired at University of North Carolina, Greensboro in 2007, my dean asked me, I want you to create something that's not typical in advising.
Hmm.
I said, okay, I'll do something different. So I decided I was going to do coaching programs. So I did coaching programs for different populations. One was speech pathology students who wanted to go to grad school. One was PhD or master students who wanted to go PhD programs, some undergraduates, this or that. And I was having so much great success with these small group coaching programs. I said, I wonder what would happen if I created it as a course.
Hmm.
So I created this course. It was a full semester course, 13, 14 weeks. Back then it was called College Success in Health, Physical Education, Recreation, and Dance. Like, who would be interested in taking a course like that? So I did it under that acronym the first year so that we could get it passed through Faculty Senate.
Right.
So the first year and a half, we did it that way. I had 2 sections of 20 students. Students loved it, got a lot of great feedback. When we submitted it as a permanent course, then I changed the name to What Could I Do with My Life?
Hmm.
Because I knew that people would want to come and see. I'm coming
Right.
and rolling. So when we changed the name, interestingly enough, the numbers went from 2 sections to 3 sections to 5 sections to 10 sections
Wow.
of the course that I'm doing by myself, plus overseeing academic advising for the School of Health and Human Sciences. So one of the comments I made to my boss is, I can't keep doing these sections if the numbers keep going up. We have to bring on another person to help with the advising piece and with this course. So in 2015, we hired another person, my friend Megan. Megan came on board. We went from 10 sections to 18 sections to 20. And like literally the last fall semester that I was at UNCG, we had 28 sections and 24 students in
Wow.
each one. We had over 600 students enrolled in the program, or at least in the course. But in that course, the whole thing was focused on helping students figure out how to live their life based on purpose. With purpose being defined, be the best version of yourself in service something bigger than yourself. So that was the premise of the work, is that definition. And once we started with that, it was not hard to enroll people in the class.
So did the purpose part, was that for each individual to define, or was there a general kind of theme, or how Because purpose is it's so individualized too. So I'm just
Right.
curious about how that worked.
So the way we did the course, we broke it up into two pieces.
Hmm.
The first half of the semester is know yourself,
Okay.
and the second half semester is serve profoundly. So we had them do a half a semester, 6 or 7 activities, or 6, 7 weeks on learning who they were, who they
Mm.
are.
Hmm.
So we would do personality assessments, strengths assessments, values assessments, motivations, superpowers. We did all those things so that they could literally say, "This is who I am."
Uh-huh.
And in the second half semesters, take who you are and think about how do you want to serve the world. And then they would come up with a lot of, we had to write a mission statement, do a major career calling poster, and do all these other activities to kind of get a sense for who they want to, how they wanted to serve.
Okay.
Yep, as a course. And interestingly enough, about 15 to 20% of the students after they did that course either switched their major or left the institution.
Oh
So,
my God.
when your institution is based on, when your work is based on retention and graduation rates, and 15 to 20% of your students are leaving,
Yeah.
it's not great PR for the institution.
Your metrics of success are a little different.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
So it has kind of evolved as this bigger thing.
Yeah.
That was even bigger than me. So,
Right.
yeah.
Were there a lot of surprises then for the students? They thought they knew who they were, but when you see it in black and white on paper or in color, I saw some of the things that you had Mary do with,
Right.
markers and all this. And so was it maybe a surprise to some of them? Like, did they discover who they were or what they wanted in a very different way than what they thought walking into the class?
Oh yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
when we would do a end of semester evaluation, most of them said, "I never thought this was going to happen. Like I was
Yeah.
pretty sure I was going to do, med school or physical therapy or this or that, and realize I was doing it because my parents wanted me to do it, or I thought I could make a lot of money, or versus what I really want to do is blah, 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 blah." And they could actually define it.
Right.
So that was the aha for most, that they could actually define what it is that they really want to do, which gave me joy. So I'm like,
Right.
I can't stop doing this. One of the things that I found, so in the later stages of doing this work, I would do surveys at the beginning of semester asking
Mhm.
students, what do you want from college? And what we got as a result, 86% said, "I want help figuring out what I want to do with my life." 86%.
Wow. That's
So
huge.
you're right. So why are we not helping students figure it out when most of them want help doing this, and we don't do anything to help them figure it out? We're just like, "Oh, you're going to be in a major and that's what you're going to do."
Right.
But the data shows even in a major, that's not necessarily the one you want to do.
Yeah. So fast forward, you came, so you retired,
Right.
and you're kind of adapting and morphing this work into other populations and taking it in new directions. And one of those was a 3-day boot camp and deep dive workshop that you did at Western Connecticut State University. Shout out to Kathleen Lindenmeyer, the director of the Career Success Center. But I attended that and was just blown away on several levels that I was telling Thorin about. And I'm just going to list off what I found extraordinary. And then I'd love for you to just comment about any part of that. I loved the granularity of the work, that it was very specific. You're taking this abstract concept of who am I and actually giving it flesh and bones. I really like that. I love that you provided, when you asked these abstract questions, you gave us food for thought and some suggestions that we could say, "Oh yeah, that's me," or "I'm going to riff on that and I'm going to, that inspires me to take it somewhere else." I also love that it wasn't us living in our heads and writing narratives. We were coloring and creating, and then deep diving with peeling the onion back with people that we just met on who we are and our fears. And so I really liked also the different ways that you came at the purpose thing through different statements and different activities. There were multiple access points that probably resonated with each of us a little differently. And I really liked having those multiple ways of approaching the one big purpose concept. So anyway, does that sound resonate as what other people say to you, or?
Yes. And interestingly enough, you were the second group. So the Western Connecticut State group was the second group to try this new formula. So in the past, it was use the tools, use the tools, use the tools. And the workbook would be twice the size, and we would try to get through as many tools as we could. In December, I decided I want to redo this whole thing because I wasn't happy with what was happening as a result of it. So people would leave and then they wouldn't use it.
Mm.
And I said, or embrace it. So I needed to do something different. So one of my good friends, when you talk about having people in your life, I have this one person in my life, his name's Ivor, and we meet every Tuesday and we literally do a deep dive into the work. And talk about different ways to do the work. And he and I had a conversation and he said, what if this was a puzzle and you were putting all the puzzle pieces together? What would that look like? And I went, And I said, so here's what the puzzle pieces would look like. So I would have, this one piece starting here and we would end with this piece and then you could put them all together. And then I said, but what can I do to get people a taste in one day? So you have the puzzle pieces, but what if they couldn't do all the puzzle pieces? What if they only had one day to do this? So we came up with the concept of the boot camp. So in September, I said, I want to do boot camp. So the way I used to do it, I could teach a class and try stuff in class. So I had, when you're doing 10 sections of a class, you get lots of feedback.
You got guinea pigs.
Right. That's exactly the word I use. I had guinea pigs. When you don't have the guinea pigs, how do you do it? So I had to do I did free sessions. And I would have people come in and do a boot camp on a Saturday, and I would try different activities and see how they worked. And September, I did one in September, one in October, one in November, and said, all right, I think I got this down. So in December, I did a boot camp for the first day and then the puzzle deep dive on this last 2 days. And the feedback was phenomenal. And I said, but how can I make it better? Even though everyone said it's really good, I know I could make this better. So what I decided to do, I finished that like the second week of December. I did that December training, and I had 3 weeks to get ready for January. So I did another little small boot camp in between during the holidays, so I could prepare to come up to Western Connecticut and try a couple new things with the boot camp. And then the deep dive, I wanted to kind of try different things. So I think it was better when I did it at Western Connecticut, but now I'm also in the process of, all right, so how do I make it better? I can always find a way to make it better. So that's what I'm doing for the one I'm doing in May, is how do I even make it better?
How do you think finding purpose, understanding your own purpose authentically and courageously can help people cultivate Moxie?
So if the goal is to show up as your courageous, authentic, energetic self, one purpose is being the best you in service to at least one thing bigger than you.
Mm-hmm.
So if you think of Moxie as how you show up in the world, purpose is how you show up in the world, being the best you in service to others. So for me, it really is focused on how can I create tools and mechanisms so that people can understand who they are at their best and then use that to serve others profoundly.
So for the purpose, is it a professional one, a personal one, or a mixture of everything? Or how do you narrow that down?
So in the old days, I would have defined purpose as finding this one thing that you were called to do.
Okay.
I've now changed that because most people see purpose as one thing. I've learned through research that purpose actually isn't one thing. Purpose is actually multiple things.
Right.
So I just created a new tool to take people on a purpose quest.
Okay.
And the purpose quest is, it could be your work.
Mm-hmm.
It could be volunteer.
Mm-hmm.
It could be, I'll use the word beauty. So
Hmm.
awe, beauty, curiosity, wonder can be
Yeah.
part of purpose. Personal growth activities can be part of purpose. Hobbies can be part of purpose. Relationships can be part of your purpose. So instead of just focusing on this one thing, and if you don't find the one thing, your life's not purposeful.
Right.
Purpose shows up in lots of different ways. So
Yes.
you can kind of explore different ways to bring more purpose in your life. So then it makes it easier for people to incorporate purpose when you look at it from multiple perspectives.
I like that. That makes a lot of sense. For me, hearing that also makes it more approachable because
Right.
not that we have silos in our life, but if we can just say, you have, your hobbies and your professional life, your family life, if you're putting into that, each one has a different purpose. So I like how that was framed. Yeah, that makes sense.
Well, what's inspired me to do the Purpose Quest? I retired in 2000. Well, I retired from UNCG in 2022. Just wanted to do this work.
So
So
that's your purpose.
yeah, so I just realized I just wanted to do life design catalyst work all the time. I also wanted to play because I'm
Yeah.
a sports guy, so I wanted to have time to play. So I'm like, you know what? I said, I'm done. I'm just going to do this full time and see where it takes me.
So is there a lot of self-inflection and self-reflection? I feel like you have to be pretty insightful and willing to push your own boundaries to ask yourself the hard questions when you're finding your purpose. And, these things that Mary was telling me about your course, and she showed me the workbook. It's quite impressive. It's a big one. But I just feel like you have to kind of be willing to be somewhat vulnerable and open and honest with yourself primarily. Is that what people who take your course, both from, the college students and to today, which is, people of all walks of life and ages, is that something that they comment on or feel?
So yes, and I can share with you. So one of the things that I've been really thinking about is what are the things people say to themselves?
Yeah.
What questions do they ask themselves?
Right.
One of the activities we use is called a 7-word life motto. So
Okay.
imagine defining how you want to live your life, how you'll live your life every day in
Yeah.
7 words.
Ooh.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. It seems a little daunting, but okay.
So for me, my 7-word life motto is striving to be 1% better every day.
Okay.
So that's a growth mind. So basically, it could be going out and taking a walk for 15 minutes. It could
Hmm.
be reading a chapter in a book. It could be listening to a podcast. It could be, watching a YouTube, a TED Talk.
Yeah.
So, because 1% is about 14 minutes and 24 seconds. So if there's something I can do for 14 minutes, 24 seconds every day that makes me better, then it's a good day.
Right.
Now, use that with the question that I ask myself every
Hmm.
day, which is, how can I be better today? Am I
Yeah.
better today than I was yesterday?
Yeah.
So instead of comparing myself to other people, all I'm doing is comparing myself to myself. And that makes everything easy because the more times I'm adding to making myself better, the better the day is.
That brings something to mind. I feel like in today's society, with social media and whatnot, it's a keeping up with the Joneses.
Right.
So I feel like that is a pivotal point that a lot of people forget today. We're always comparing ourselves to other people, and we're inundated with celebrities who are just showing their highlight reel in addition to the Joneses. That I feel like is something that everyone should realize and do. And is that something that is a keystone then to the program?
Well, since I just came up with it, I've only started sharing it in 2024. Um,
Oh, okay.
I have a sense that will be one of the keystones to this work moving forward is so don't ask yourself, compare yourself to other people, compare yourself to you
Yeah.
yesterday. And were you better today than you were yesterday? And if you can answer yes, then it's been a good day.
I was going to say that's one of my favorite things so far that I've learned from this.
Well, I also the breaking back to Thorin's point about breaking the purpose down into different categories with the purpose quest. I feel like it takes this monolithic block of whatever, and then you can actually take your temperature in different areas. Like, well, on the beauty and awe thing, I hike every day. I'm pretty set. Like I'm doing okay in that part of my purpose. And then you
Right.
start, it's almost like an appreciative inquiry.
That's
You're
right.
looking at it from where what the strengths and what you already have, and then the gaps seem a lot smaller into what do you need to flesh out. The other part I was telling Thorne, there was one aspect where you look at some of it could be past trauma or past or insecurities, and kind of like a silver lining that it influences how you show up in the world for the positive. Like one of them is if you were judged as a child and you've made it a point to be super non-judgy, then that is something good that came out of something bad. Can you talk
Right.
about that at all? Like where that came from?
So I'm lucky because my wife's a therapist.
Yes.
So if I create anything, I usually run it by her
Hmm.
and get her insights. And she's a family and child therapist, so most of her clients are children, and most of them are middle and high school children.
Okay.
So, I'll ask her, so if you are using this with a client, what do you think would happen with a client? So she actually has used some of the questions. So in the story, My Courageous Self, it's a list of questions for people to examine their lives. And she will use some of those questions in her therapy practice to get down to the root of things and to help people move forward. So I'm very fortunate to have her in my life because she has helped kind of help. It's almost like looking in a mirror at yourself and saying, all right, here's what I see,
Hmm.
but then I'm going to write a statement saying, even though this is what I see, I know I can move past certain things. And I think it's Shad Hempstetter or something. He does a lot of work with self-talk. And what his research has shown is if you put the right ways to talk to yourself you can literally change the frame of how you see things.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So you think about the 7-word life motto, the story of the courageous self statement. We have people write lots of different, the vision statement. All these statements is helping you think about the statements you're using to say to yourself that could actually move you forward. So I don't know if that answers your question, but it's kind of a
Yeah, no, it all does. I mean, we tend to look at the bad things that happen to us, and some worse, much worse than others, and also our insecurities as limits.
Mhm.
And yet they have provided us with a unique way of looking at the world and coping and mechanisms and strategies to move past that maybe should be celebrated a bit
Right.
and given a kind of a higher billing.
And it's funny you say that. So the fun, I don't know if you remember doing this, You the Superhero poster, but that's
Oh
seeing
yeah.
but that's seeing you in your talk about courageous self. Because I'm asking you to say, what are your superpowers, but what's your kryptonite?
Yeah.
But then one of the things we use is your core emotional challenges. So what are the challenges you went through that you can help other people get through?
Right.
Hmm.
And look at that as how you serve others.
Right.
And that to me is a really interesting way on taking the stuff you've been through and how you can help others get through it themselves.
Which plays right into the service of something larger than self.
That's exactly right.
And it's also therapeutic and self-healing.
That's right. So, and I had the definition, purpose is become the best version of yourself in service to something bigger than yourself. And it always seemed like it was one thing, one thing, one thing. But as I've done this work, I had to change it to at least one thing. Because
Hmm.
you could be I mean, some of us who believe, have a higher power. I believe in God. God is one of the things I want to be in service to, but I also want to be in service to my family. I want to be in service to my community. So, but there are multiple ways you can be in service. It doesn't just have to be this one thing.
Mm.
And that was a big change for me. And that's one of the more recent changes. The other thing is I've noticed as I've done this work, and I'll give an example. I just did a boot camp a couple of Saturdays ago, and most of the participants were people either on the edge of retirement or had just retired, and they were looking at their what's next. And that's
Mm.
where I see this work evolving is, these adults in transition,
Right.
40-year-olds who've been in a job for 15 years and it's like, all right, what do I do next? Or
Right.
retirees, I've been doing this for, 30 years. And what do I do next? One of the guys that had attended he's an athletic director at a school, at one of the local schools. He's been there for like 35 years. And he's like, I'm done. And I said, so how did you hear about it? Well, my daughter came to your training in December and said, you should go to Bill's thing. He might help you out. And literally, he's like, I'm so glad I came, because he's like, I don't have all of it, but at least I have a direction to start. And I think he's going to come to the one I do in May. So, I'm noticing people who are retiring whose identity is wrapped up in this one thing. And he's like, I've been an athletic director like all my life. Now what?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a big cliff. Feels like a big cliff.
Exactly.
Elise Harney Real Estate is the #1 real estate agency for the tri-state region, and they provide a comprehensive overview of the regional market spanning Litchfield, Dutchess, Columbia, and Berkshire counties.
Elise Harney Real Estate serves 40 unique communities with 35 years of experience. They have a team of knowledgeable real estate professionals to work with you to buy or sell your house.
Their offices are located in Salisbury, Millerton, Norfolk, Falls Village, and Riverton, or you can visit them online at www.harneyrealestate.com.
And there's another word in your definition of purpose that stands out to me, at least the definition that was in the workbook. I know you're always evolving your work, but the process of becoming the best version, not being. And I wonder if you could talk about, I gather that was an intentional word choice of becoming, because you always seem to be becoming.
Right. So become seems like it's, once you get there, then then it's done. Becoming meaning you're always trying to get there. It's infinite. So being purposeful in fact, I just changed the definition again and added never ending, because it's something that you're always doing till you die. Because if you want to boil down purpose into two things, it's to grow and to serve. You can always serve till you die. You can always grow till you die. So if you look at it from that perspective, purpose never ends.
You got that? You got that, Thorin?
I'm marinating. I know, I fully agree. It's like, kind of like you never stop learning type of thing. So why would you stop growing?
That's right.
Yeah.
And I had to learn to grow and to serve. And I just decided to keep it short because, to become your best self, which is the growing part, and in service to something bigger than yourself is to serve. So I just wanted to shorten it and make it easier for people to digest.
I like that.
But I feel like that's, especially for younger people, graduate middle school. Then I just got to graduate high school. Then I just got to graduate college. And we put these benchmarks that make it seem like if you do this, then it'll all be fine.
Right.
I just had to get my first job, and infusing this language of process and iterations of you. I mean, I feel like you've taken this program and went from, boot camp 1.0 to boot camp 6.0 in like less than 2 months. So there's something in you that's like, keep on swimming, just keep moving forward, but intentionally.
Yeah.
That 1% better.
Right. 1%. And it makes it easy because 1% could be doing a podcast.
Yeah.
Which is about 45 minutes. So that's 3% in one day.
We can work with that.
And now you can say that in retirement, you're in the top 1%.
Oh, yeah. This I can honestly say, I'm going to do a shout out to my friend Megan, because she saw something in me that I didn't see in myself, which is why it's always important to have the right people around.
Right.
Because when we were talking about whether I should stay and try to live out the rest of my 5 years of retirement so I can get full benefits, or quit or retire, she said, Bill, here's the thing. If you leave, you will be a better version of you.
Ah.
you will not, because the job is actually holding you back from being the best you. Once you leave, you will be a better you. Watch what happens. And to have,
I
okay,
need Megan.
you
I
need a
Megan.
And she was right. She was exactly right. And we think about getting a mentor and all our mentors have to be older. Megan is 20 years younger than me, and she saw that. And she's in goal. I mean, to the point she just finished her dissertation in December. She just finished, and she did a dissertation on how this work has it was titled Cultivating Purpose in undergraduates. And she did her dissertation on it. And she's just like, this work, you transformed my life. Like I've got my doctorate because of what you've done with this work and gotten me involved with. So we're just kind of like this. Even though I'm not there anymore, we meet at least twice a month to talk about, what can we do to make it better? What can we do to make it better? What can we do to make it better? So it's important to have the right people on your.
How do you go about picking those right people? Or do you have any advice for people on how to pick those right people?
So one of the things that, and I just introduced, and you did it in the workshop, is this thing called crucial connections. And it really is thinking about the connections you have with people. So I've been able to define deep versus useful versus casual. So if you think about the people in your life, are they the deepest, the relationships where, it's reciprocal, where you're both supporting each other through good and the bad? Do you spend is that the person you can call at 3:00 in the morning saying, I need help. Can you help me? And they're there. How many of those relationships do you have? And the research, in fact, I just had the book. Oh yeah, it's right here. So there's a book called The Good Life: Lessons from the World's Longest Scientific Study of Happiness.
Oh yeah.
In that book, they talk about what's the number of deep relationships you should have. So I've read that book. I've read some other books, and it seems like the number is between 2 and 5. And I would argue that most people, and actually the data shows most people, if they have one, that's a lot.
Really?
Yeah. Especially younger people. If you ask younger people, do you have a deep connection in your life? Most of them couldn't identify anyone.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
So I think this work helps at least get that process started on, if I'm going to connect with someone that has a similar interest or similar, something.
Right.
Yeah.
How do you advise people as to if they see someone in the kind of maybe the periphery of their life and they see that potential connection with them? How do they approach them? Is that something that your program and you walk through in your workshops?
I don't.
Okay.
So, because most of the time what I do is work with my tribe now. And so I'm usually that person for most of the tribe people. And then what I'll do is ask them, so who else do you have?
Right.
When I worked at UNCG, we actually did an activity called Important People in Your Life. I haven't used that activity for years. But one of the things we would do is have them identify up to 5 people. So, you think about the 5 richest people, you think about the 5 most, actors who won these awards, or this or that. What kind of influence do they have on your life?
Right.
It's like none. What about the people who've helped you get through a tough situation? What about the people who've done, provided you support when you needed it the most? Who are those people? And when they think about it, it's like, oh, yeah, that person.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the person you want to try to develop a deeper relationship with. Because
it may seem scary to some people, especially younger people, to try to make a connection like that or approach someone. So I was just curious to see like how that is part of this, with making those deeper connections. That I think that would take some moxie to step up to someone to try to make that connection. So I was just curious, how do you cultivate that courage to identify the person first, and then how do you approach them to try to deepen that?
So I'll give you a really good example. So when I taught the class, they would do, one of the posters they would create is called My Life, My Story.
Okay.
So it's basically saying, this is the stuff I've been through in my life. Okay. And what we would do is actually create this thing called a gallery walk. So everyone would put their posters on the wall, around the wall, and we would have 15 minutes where people could look at other students' posters.
Okay.
One semester, we had 6 students who had moms that had either passed away from breast cancer or was going through breast cancer. And they
Okay.
literally formed their own support group
Oh, wow.
on their own. I didn't influence it at all, but they used each other to help them get through that situation.
Wow.
That's the kind of stuff we could be doing.
That gave me goosebumps when you said that.
It still gives me goosebumps
Yeah.
because to see that connection at that deep level
Yeah.
was profound for me,
Yeah.
which is why I think, when we do the workshops, most people say, oh, it's just learning more material, but we spend a lot of time having you connect with someone you don't know.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So you will literally spend, you do the superhero poster, and then you share your poster with someone you don't know for 30 or 40 minutes.
Wow.
You have a deeper connection.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're doing that. I mean, you'll end up making a deep connection with at least 6 or 7 other people during the workshop. And they could be a lifelong friend in the future. They might not be, but at least you learn how to do that process.
I think also the connections, back to that study you're referring to, if that's the Harvard study.
Yeah.
That Thorin, they also talk about these small interactions, like with the barista at Starbucks, or holding the door open for someone and saying hello, that those little interactions have an outsized impact. And I think drawing attention to the more casual exchanges we have with people can then give people confidence to take the next step. And the other thing, doing that activity, it made me think of the pieces, the people that are missing. And then once you kind of bring that to consciousness, like, I really wish I had someone with a great sense of humor in my tribe. Like, I really could use a good laugh. I tend to be a little serious. Then it's like that word that you didn't know one day, you see it in print one day, you look it up, and then throughout the week, you're seeing it over and over again. I feel like bringing those needs to consciousness, that person's going to show up.
Right.
So that brings me to, on your sheet here, I'm going to show you here. One thing stuck out to me. It says on your character summary, believe that we are all connected in some way and that everything happens for a reason. So what Mary just said, is that like part karma or the universe? That, do you believe in that? And putting it, first of all, recognizing it, being conscious of this, like I need a funny friend. So, and then you're actively and maybe subconsciously, actively, if that's the thing, putting it out there, and then you're putting it, but then it comes back to you. Is that part of that kind of thing that you have? That's part of the character summary?
Yeah, I'm always a big believer. If you put it out to the universe, the universe will respond. If you don't put it out to the universe won't respond.
Exactly.
So you're better off putting it out there and seeing what happens than not putting it out there and nothing happens. So it's kind of like when you buy a car and you're like, I'm thinking about this car, and then all of a sudden it shows up all the time. Like I was thinking about buying a Honda Ridgeline, and all of a sudden now I see Honda Ridgelines everywhere. I'm like, I never saw them out there. Now they're everywhere.
Is it just you're opening your mind's eye to it?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
I wanted to ask a question, go back to the people in your life. Here's maybe the opposite. How do you identify also toxic people? And because there are, and I've gone through in my life, and I can count on one hand how many times I have really taken a hard look at myself in my life because there's something that was going on. And I remember one pivotal moment, and I was standing, and I just moved. I was standing in my new kitchen, and there was something said about my current best friend at the time. And I just went, you know what? I don't need that type of negativity in my life. She is doing no good for me emotionally, physically, mentally, like my whole psyche about this person. This is someone I have loved for years, has been my best friend for years and years. But that doesn't feel right to me. And we actually drifted apart right after that. But primarily because I came to that conclusion that this person is actually toxic to me. And, weeks later, I was out in situations, and, mutual friends are like, oh, you guys aren't really friends anymore. And I was like, no. And then there was a different situation that came to light from interactions now that I was disassociated from her. I'm not saying she's a bad person. It was just like, I felt this toxicity, and recognizing, and it was such an eye opener. So talking about all these core people in your life and the importance of making these connections. What about these toxic people that might be in your life?
So we do a activity. It's actually two different activities, but I'll use the short. We do a transformation triad
Uh-huh.
where you kind of look at it. What is working well in your life? What's not
Yeah.
working well?
Uh-huh.
One of them is, do you have toxic people, or we call them energy vampires,
Yes,
where they
yes,
literally
yes.
suck the energy
They
out of you?
do. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. We actually, and if that needs work, what is the work that you need to do to get those people out of your life?
Oh,
So
okay.
we do that, as that is actually one of the pieces we do in looking at, we talk about, the vision of where you want your life to go.
Hmm.
Sometimes you have to get rid of people in your life to move forward.
Yeah. And I mean, that sounds harsh and possibly cruel in a way, but it's so true. And I just feel like, not everything is positive and great, but you have to also acknowledge the hard and the difficult. And it could be an embodiment in a person that is just not doing you any good. So I was so curious to see how that, works in workshop in the program.
Yep. We talk about that.
Good. Yeah.
But you can't work on everything at once.
No, no.
So you
Yeah.
have to really be careful on what you pick and choose. Are you focused? So what we do in this thing called a transformation triad, think about something you can do for yourself,
Hmm.
something you can do for your relationships, and something you do in your work, in your quote unquote work.
Right.
And focus on something in one of those three areas, or all three. So that gives at least a start of saying, this is what I want to do to change something about my life,
Okay.
and keep it simple, so you can see success. And we actually give a limit of 30 to 60 days. So this
Oh,
thing you're going to do has to be done in 30 to 60 days. So we want them to really focus on, all right, here's something I can do right now to make my life better.
so is it kind of the psychology of it that if you're actually seeing results that people will gravitate more towards and kind of do more of a buy-in, if you will, to
That's
use
right.
not a great term, but that they feel that, oh, this is actually working. I can see results.
Right. And we also have them identify accountability partner, because the data also shows you're more likely to do it if you have someone that's holding you accountable to complete it.
So the gym buddy,
Yep, that's right.
analogy.
Like the podcast buddy.
Yeah,
Or the
yeah,
podcast, right? Like my
pretty much.
wife is my accountability partner, and I created a document called the Catalyst Covenant, and it has all my goals and how I'm going to live my life for the next 30, 60 days. It's in my bathroom. She sees it. I see it. She asks, how are you doing? How are you doing? Because she's on it. And
Hmm.
it's like, positive affirmation, hug, these are the things I'm going to do for you. And she's like, okay, you did good today. All right, you did good today. You did good today.
I like that.
Yeah.
But I think those the concrete small steps, because I totally agree. You can't move forward everywhere all at once. You
Yeah.
have to pick and choose low-hanging fruit to build the momentum that you think you can sustain over time.
Yep.
And that one poster that we did where you had the 5 categories and what were small things, I
Right.
took it out today to show Thorin. And I'm like, oh boy, I've actually done some of this stuff. So I am taking those small steps. And yeah, and then that empowerment builds more empowerment.
And it's in your conscious now, even
Yeah.
though you might not see it, it's there.
Yes.
And as you go through, I mean, if we look at your posters a year from now, that calling connection work plan, I wouldn't be shocked if you complete at least half of it,
Yeah.
because it's in your consciousness now.
Right.
And that's what makes this fun.
Yeah. So where do you see this going? Like what's, I know, because you are like never stopping with the evolution of your materials. So where are you headed in your mind right now?
So, I've been thinking about that a lot. I'm reading this book, Strength to Strength by Arthur Brooks, and it's called, talking about the second half of your life. And when he's talking, one of the things, first chapter is on the decline of your best, like your experience, there's a decline that comes.
Oh.
And I keep thinking about, he talks about a 20-year, there's a 20-year period where you start doing this work, you peak, and then you start going down. And I went, so this year is the 10th year I've been doing these trainings.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm at the halfway point. So is this the peak? And now I'm going to start going downhill?
So, Bill, does he talk about that? Almost sounds like a slippery slope where you're not paying much attention and you're starting on the descent. If you're living your life intentionally, do you think you could increase your shelf life?
I think so the next chapter, which I'm going to read later today, is called The Second Curve.
Oh, okay.
So
That sounds encouraging.
Right. So for me, because I'm so growth minded, it's how do I want this work to evolve, and not necessarily for me, but for others. So I'm really thinking about how can I support people like you, Mary, and others in developing this for their own lives. And one of the things that I even talked about with Ivor this morning was, if you want to do the work, and this is a statement I always use, it goes from doing the work to being the work. There's a difference.
Yeah.
Because when the work is already a part of you, it's not work. And then you're not focused on doing, I got to make money. So when you're just doing the work, you're doing it because you want to make money.
Right.
When you're being the work, you're being your authentic self. And then I would argue money will come your way as long as you're doing it for the right reason, not for the wrong reason.
I think Caddyshack really encapsulated that first. Be the ball, Danny.
That's right. Be the ball. That's right.
I have a question though with the 20-year thing. Is it like, Steve Jobs always said, don't get comfortable, because then we kind of get complacent and whatnot. Is it part of that we get comfortable in our lives and in our routine and whatnot? Is it that we work towards it and then at the peak is the comfortable and then we start to decline after that? But what you're saying with your life and how you are goal oriented and driven and always ever evolving, could that maybe not apply to you then because of that kind of mindset and philosophy?
Yeah, well, I'm always thinking, how can I be better today than I was yesterday?
Yeah.
So I think knowing that I'm always in search of what does better look like, and and not only that, in service to others. So creating tools, I've done that for, I've created my first tool probably in the 90s. So I've always been in tool creation mode, but now I think I can stop focusing on the tools because I think I have the work where I need it to be, and start saying, how do we package it so that other people can use it and grow in whatever they're doing? And I think that's the next evolution for me.
Okay.
I think.
That might change tomorrow.
Yeah, to be continued.
But as long as I keep reading, I know there's going to be more stuff coming.
Of course, yeah.
But if I stop reading like I do now, like 1 to 2 books a week, if I stop doing that, there'll probably be less tools and more serving. And you can serve you can grow when you serve others.
Yeah, of course. Yes.
Yes. So we are at that time.
Already?
I'm like, wait, we can't stop.
I know, but we have to. We have to. So, Bill, at this moment in time, in your state of evolution that you're in right now, this moment of becoming, if you had to give advice to someone, one little piece to help them cultivate Moxie, what would you say to them?
It's easy. Know yourself. That's it. And I wrote, go through a process of self-discovery. Like we do, this work is self-discovery. If you get to know who you are and how you, everything about you, your strengths, your abilities, your gifts, the stuff that holds you back, your weaknesses. If you can go through that process, that is how you can increase your Moxie. Guaranteed. Know yourself. Yep.
All right, Mary, we have to workshop. Are we signing up for the May one to see what changed?
Exactly. I'm still working on my workbook. And I'm working on executing on the doing, and
I'm going to hold you accountable now since I know there's an accountability buddy. You showed me your superhero drawing. I'm going to be like, how's that bathroom mirror, going, that list?
Thanks a lot, Bill.
You're welcome.
She is a taskmaster. She will hold me accountable. So, anyway, thank you so much. And we look forward to seeing more life design boot camps and deep dives and all the good stuff you're offering people with such generosity of spirit. So thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity. I really appreciate you too. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. It was a
Alrighty.
pleasure.
Definitely. Have a great day.
I think we were right, Mary. He is Mr. Moxie.
He is. He could
Right?
enter the contest and be crowned Mr. Moxie.
But oh my God, there was so much there. I loved everything. What was your biggest takeaway, having taken his course, knowing him obviously a little more than me, but then just having that conversation with him? What are you feeling right now?
So, my philosophy background
Mm-hmm.
makes doing the hard work of self as an individual activity where it hurts a little bit. It's like working out a muscle you haven't worked in a long time. You're going to get cramps, it's going to feel achy, but you feel better afterwards. And I feel like his boot camp and his deep dive and the work that he promotes really helps you invest in yourself. It puts
Mm-hmm.
your own skin in your game.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's a tool that we could all use in our toolbox, the ability and the structure to really think about how we want to live our life, how we want to serve others, and how we want to keep becoming better.
Yeah.
What about you?
When he was, his focus on purpose and, basically, purpose and helping others, or helping or contributing, as I always like to call it, seeing the emphasis on that and how he then defined it, and, the route we went down while we were discussing it. I see so clearly now how and why that's the focus of his workshops and his program and his teaching. But also hearing him talk about doing the work. And, I asked him, this is kind of an inflection. You have to look deep in yourself and be honest, and it's vulnerable in a way, because you really are having to be honest with yourself. You can't lie to yourself about it. So all these tools that he has, and the questions and the exercises, some of which you showed me, these posters that you were making, you're exposing yourself to yourself. And sometimes what we think is very different when you see it in black and white, or in this case with color markers, it's surprising sometimes. So I was very curious about that. And then just, the core people in our life, I loved hearing about that, because I knew that, but I had forgotten about that.
Yeah.
And somewhere in the recesses of my mind, I knew that it was a very low number of, how many core people we actually have in our lives. But the older we get, your friend pool kind of narrows, but you have more meaningful, I would hope, relationships with fewer people that actually mean more. But hearing him talk about it, and his relationship with, I believe her name was Megan, and how she gave him insight that he hadn't even realized, it reminded me of instances like that, and how important those are, and how important those connections are with certain people in our life, and how influential they can be in our trajectory, in our life decisions, and just how and why we are who we are, and how we see ourselves too. And I think, so all of this is kind of encompassed in what he's trying to help the people that are in his programs, his students, and, people from all walks of life.
That's a lesson I try to really hammer home to my students: is there is a team, and you need other people to be your best self, to be successful. And this American myth that I made it all on my own and I didn't need anybody else. It's really not a way for a life of fulfillment and thriving. So I really appreciate that emphasis on collaboration.
Well, it goes with, we're not an island either. So, it takes a village sometimes, and we're not isolated by ourselves. You can put a hand out for, meaning, reach your hand out for help or advice, or just have a cup of coffee with someone to ask input, So I think people often forget that too in this fast-paced life that we live, right?
Yes, agreed. Well, Thorin, I'm your accountability partner, for better or worse. So
I thought I was yours with, your
it's a two-way street, sister.
All right. I guess I have to do my workshop and write up my, life mottos and my superpowers and character summary. I have to work on that.
Exactly. Well, till the next episode.
Sounds good. See you later.
This episode of Main Street Moxie is proudly sponsored by Meadowscapes, a division of Matt's Landscaping, and Elise Harney Real Estate.